In this video, I'm going to talk about Power BI. Power BI is a data visualization tool that it's not unlike many other products that are on the market, such as Tableau or SAS Visual Analytics. They allow you to see things on the web, create a dashboard, put it there, and share it with others. The good news about Power BI is that you can do a lot of the activities it allows you to do on your local desktop to get practice with it, whereas maybe some of the other products can have a significant licensing fee involved with using their software. So you can learn the general ideas here and then use it in any context, including Power BI and Microsoft's cloud services, where they will charge you money to use them. Okay, so what is Power BI? Well, down in the lower left you see a bunch of different examples of data that you might have available to you out there in the world. Stuff in the cloud, generically speaking, a table in a web browser, Access databases, SQL databases, Excel files, and many different software as a service products that you might be using. You can pull in data from many different types of data sources out there and create visually immersive dashboards. And there are three components of Power BI currently. There is the Power BI Desktop, which is the desktop application that you use to make dashboards and visualizations, and then you publish that to the Power BI service so that other people can then view it, and then those dashboards that are hosted there on the web can also be viewed in web apps that are specific to Power BI. Here's some of the terminology that they use related to Power BI: visualizations, data sets, reports, dashboards, and tiles. And I'll go over each of those quickly. So visualizations is this generic term that represents the colorful parts that we see in this diagram. The box around it actually represents a tile, which is on a different slide, but the option to put a graphic of a particular type on the page is described as a visualization. Now we might ask, why do we use visualizations? Well, it's because they tell us things differently than just straight quantitative information. Kind of your alternative to this is to use a pivot table, which you may be familiar with, and a pivot table will put things in rows and columns, but imagine that there are millions of those. Well, that's not necessarily useful to you because that's too much detail. In contrast, consider one of these maps down here where you could maybe plot hundreds of observations, individual records, and then the size of the circle represents, whether there was a lot of something like sales or a little, and you can tell at a glance patterns that you wouldn't be able to get out of maybe a table with hundreds of rows, such as looks like there's lower sales in the south and a lot larger sales in the north. Here's a tile. Tile holds a visualization. If you put a whole bunch of tiles together, we would consider that to be a dashboard. And a dashboard tells a story related to some topic. So for example, if you were Apple and you launched a new product line, maybe a new form of the iPhone, you might track how it's doing in a particular region and look at many different metrics related to that, and be able to convey, coherently what's going on. Related to that, there's this idea of a report, which is when you have a whole bunch of dashboards, but they have different tabs called pages across the bottom. And so if you were to click across all of them, you could maybe tell a story about, some particular subject. Again, if it was a Microsoft phone, or rather an Apple phone that had come out, you might have a visualization or dashboard related to each and every region of the world, and so you could see how things were going in one area of the world versus another as you step from page to page to page, which would, in a presentation to managers at a place like Apple, that should be very useful. Another idea here is the data set, and that represents the data that you pull in from multiple sources. And there's another term, connector, which is the idea that Power BI can tap into with usually just usernames and passwords, lots of different data sources that are out there on the web, such as Salesforce and MailChimp and things like that. This is what it looks like when you say, go out and grab data from a particular web-based, cloud-based source that's out there. They give you these nice little tile-looking things with a graphic of the service that you're about to connect to. And after you do connect to it, it will allow you to it'll put together a dashboard that's already kind of stubbed out for you with the main data that you would probably be looking for if you were pulling data from that source, which is kind of a nice thing to do. You might want to pause the video for a minute and make sure that you understand all of these concepts. See if you can answer them. Alright, with that done, let's talk about the desktop software that's available. So part 1 here says that this is the ribbon over here on the left hand side. Now typically in Microsoft products the ribbon is the thing across the top, but they're saying that this is the ribbon over here on the left. The first little icon there I think is called the report view, and it's where you get this thing that's in the middle called the canvas, which is where you create your visualizations. If I were to kind of go a little bit out of order, over here number 4, this grouping over here are the visualizations, the type of graphs that you can pull down onto the canvas. Down there at number 3 we see the pages that are there. So to create a report, then we would create many dashboards. Every page really can be a dashboard, and so we can just click across those if we have many of them. After you've imported data, you will see your list of data sources that are available, similar to a pivot table over here in area 5 where it says fields. Right now it shows that there are 2 different data sources, and if I were able to click on the little twisty ties in the image, the little twisties, I would see a list of the columns that are available in those data sets, and then be able to drag those over onto the canvas area and get some default visualization of that, which is typically a bar chart to get started. And then you can just click on the visualizations to change its format and then drag more data on there, and usually it makes a pretty good guess at what you're trying to do. The second icon over here in the ribbon is the data set, and the third one is, so that's where you can actually see the raw data in rows and columns as if it were in a spreadsheet for a particular source of data. So you can click across those, and then there's this relationship view icon which allows you to connect columns together so that you can properly relate the tables to one another, well, or data sources if you don't want to call them tables. One other thing that I'll mention is that as you drag a visualization here, this number 4, onto the screen, then underneath it with this first item selected with a little yellow underline there, this tends to then hold areas similar to the little quadrant that's available in the lower right hand portion of doing a pivot table in Excel. All the fields that you drag onto the screen from the field area, they end up getting listed here. So if you need to change them from an x-axis to a y-axis or something like that, that ends up being modified down here, and the options are going to change a little bit depending on which visualizations you choose. And then this little formatting paintbrush icon will allow you to do things with the visualization, possibly changing the size of things, changing colors, changing the number of decimal points that are displayed. Okay, in a subsequent video I'm going to demonstrate using Power BI Desktop with a finance related Excel sheet. A couple other things I should mention is that also if you have this PowerPoint, you can click on a couple of these images and you can see some short videos where Microsoft talks about these some of these things related to Power BI in more detail. And lastly, just something that I think is worth knowing is that there are some great resources out there to learn more about using Power BI. In particular, there is a training course to become a Microsoft data scientist, and it includes a pretty rich course on Power BI. Some of the materials I'm about to show you come from there. I highly recommend doing this if you're interested in working this area. You can do the courses for free, or if you pay money you can get a certification for doing it. So it's a great thing to have available to you.